Hey y'all, today we're making sourdough sandwich bread. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to need to do is get our yeast going. So we're going to need 1 cup of warm water, about 100 degrees, a tablespoon of honey, whatever kind of honey you have will work just fine, and then 3 teaspoons of active dry yeast, not the instant stuff. So I know that y'all are probably thinking, well, you said sourdough and now you're putting yeast. Yes, because we're making this bread with sourdough discard, okay? So sourdough discard is your sourdough starter, but it's not active, okay? So it's going to need a little bit of help to get going. So that's why we add the regular yeast to this recipe, okay? So stir that up good. Make sure that you get down on the bottom and get your honey mixed in real good. You're going to let that sit for about 5 or 10 minutes until it's nice and bubbly, okay? I throw a towel over mine. I don't know why, I just do. And that's what it's going to look like after about 10 minutes. It's nice and frothy and bubbly and wonderful. If it is not bubbly, then your yeast may not be good and you probably need to start over because, I mean, if you don't have yeast, your bread's not going to rise. So anyway, now we're going to take our flour, and somebody please tell me why I put the darn bowl on the mixer and then decided to pour the flour in, and I couldn't because I couldn't turn the cup because it was too big. Anyway, whatever, welcome to my kitchen. Okay, so dump your flour in there. You're going to need 4 cups. I'm using bread flour. You can use whatever kind of flour that you have, okay? And then I'm adding in 2 teaspoons of salt. And y'all, I'm going to make sure that in the description box when I write the recipe out, I'm going to put all the measurements in grams down there for anybody who needs the measurements in grams, okay? So it's going to be down there for y'all. So I mix my salt into my flour a little bit, and then I'm going to pour my yeast mixture in there. Make sure you scrape the bottom of your bowl or the bottom of your cup that your yeast stuff was in to make sure you get all the honey out of there. Then we're going to add in 1 cup, and that's not a cup, y'all, that is 1/4 of a cup of oil. And then I'm reserving an extra tablespoon, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. But for now, put 1/4 of a cup in there. And then you're going to add in 1 cup of your sourdough discard. Now, mine is really, really thick when it sits in the refrigerator, so I usually take mine out when I first get started making this or making whatever sourdough discard recipe I'm making, just so it'll kind of loosen up a little bit. I just measure it out into however much I'm going to need and just let it sit on the counter while I'm getting the other things together. So but however you want to do it is fine. If yours is thin and you can pour it straight out of your container, then you can use it straight out of the refrigerator. It'll be fine. So then we're going to knead this. Now I'm going to put my dough hook on my stand mixer, obviously, as you can see. If you don't have a stand mixer, you can knead this by hand, but you're going to need to knead it for the same amount of time. So get your you got to get your workout on, get your shoulders ready, because it's going to take some strength to get this, kneaded as long as it needs to be. You're going to mix this on low. I have this sped up, but I had my mixer on 2. So when I got about a minute in, I see how shaggy mine still is and it's still kind of dry looking. That's when I add the extra tablespoon of oil. You don't always need it. All kind of things can factor into whether your stuff is too dry or not. So that's why I said start with the 1/4 cup. If yours is looking super shaggy and real dry and it's kind of not coming together after about a minute or so in your mixer, then add that extra tablespoon. And 1 extra tablespoon is all you're going to need. Now, I have, if you're not into sourdough, I have a regular bread videos that I've made, recipes, videos, and I will link those for y'all in case you need it. I'll also link my sourdough playlist. So you're going to let that knead for about 10 minutes, okay? It needs to be no longer sticky. See how it's pulling away from the side of the bowl? It's super smooth. Like I said, it is not sticky to the touch at all. So on low speed for 10 minutes, that's what I did for mine. And again, if you're doing this by hand, then, just get in there with that elbow grease and, give it a good 10 minutes, okay? So then you're going to spray your bowl with a little cooking spray or you can rub it with butter, or you can just put regular oil and rub oil in there. Whatever you want to do, it's fine. Just grease it with something. Take your dough ball out, and you can see the consistency of my dough ball. It's not falling apart. It's a pretty held together ball of dough. It is not dry at all. It is not sticky at all. I'm just kind of forming it into a ball because I'm a bit of a perfectionist sometimes. It doesn't have to be perfect. Y'all just plop it in there. So I put it in there, and then I spray a tiny bit more cooking spray on top. And then I'm going to cover this with a shower cap, which is not really a shower cap. This is a food grade bowl cover, but I'm going to say shower cap in half my videos. But just know that it's not really a shower cap. And then because my kitchen is very cold, I sit my bowl on something and I cover my bowl on top of my plastic wrap with a towel. Now we use the plastic because that keeps the moisture in and keeps your dough from drying out. Let that rise until it doubles, okay? I sit mine on the stove with my stove light on, but not with the oven on. So I let mine rise for about 2 hours. You can do it from between 1 and 2 hours depending on how warm your kitchen is, but it just needs to double in size. So this is my original recipe, y'all, and I'll tell you about that in just a second. So I normally put it in that big pan that you see down there at the bottom. That's what happens when you put this one recipe into that pan. It's gigantic and it's like giant bread, okay? So what I decided to do, that pan that I cooked it in originally is a 9x5. So these pans are 8x4. It doesn't seem like there's that big of a difference in the size, but it makes a world of difference, okay, as you're gonna see. So anyway, you're gonna grease your pans up, and like I said, those are 8x4 pans. I got those at the Dollar Tree. You do not have to have anything fancy to make this bread, okay? And you can see I'm popping little bubbles here and there, and you can see the dough's kind of deflating. That's okay. We don't want big bubbles in this because it's sandwich bread, okay? We don't want all those big, pretty sourdough bubbles in this sort of loaf of bread. So you don't need any flour. Your dough it should not be sticky or anything like that. And you're just going to press it out till you press all those bubbles out. And I try to press mine to like the length of my pan just to make it easier when I roll it. And my silicone mat, y'all, is non-slip, as y'all probably know from watching my videos. But because I didn't wipe all the flour off with a wet rag before I threw the mat down to roll these out, I had a little flour on my counter, and so my mat was slipping because of the flour all over my counter. So there you go. But you're just going to roll that up, pinch the seams together, kind of tighten up the top of it the best that you can, and then you're going to plop it down in that greased pan. Pop any big bubbles that come up because we don't want those on our sandwich bread. And you may have one or two that end up in your bread, and that's okay. It's fine, but just try to pop them if you see them, okay? And like I said, y'all, this is my original recipe. I am so proud of that. And I've made a lot of sourdough bread, okay? I've made a lot. I tried so many different recipes, so many different, like everybody was like, you got to make this one, it's the best. None of them turned out for me. So I tweaked and adjusted, and this is what I came up with, and this is what works for me. So hopefully y'all will try this, and y'all's will come out just as fantastic as mine did. So once you get your bread all rolled up and into your pan, you can see it's not really touching the edges. It's, a small little ball of dough down in the bottom of our pans. But that's okay. It's going to get bigger. So what I do at this point is I take just a little bit of butter, I melt it in the microwave, and then I rub butter on the top of mine. Now, I do this for a couple of reasons. One thing, I like the way it browns. Another thing, it tastes good. It tastes good. You put that little extra bit of butter on there, it makes a world of difference on this bread. Now, if you don't want to do it, it's your bread, you don't have to, but I highly suggest put a little melted butter on there at this point in your bread making, and you're gonna thank me for it later. So we're gonna cover those up. I'm gonna sit them right back on the same little thing I had my bowl on, and then I'm gonna cover them with a towel. I'm gonna sit them beside my stove. I'm gonna preheat my oven to 375 degrees Fahrenheit and just sit these beside the stove so they'll get a little bit of that warmth, again, because my kitchen is so cold. And then I let this rise for about an hour to an hour and a half. Mine is usually on the higher side. So when my first rise in the bowl took me about 2 hours, and this one took me about an hour and a half. Okay. but you just need it to double in size and fill out your pan. See that? And see how it's kind of above my pan now? It's risen above the sides of the pan. That's where you need it to be, okay? So we're gonna put these in the oven, 375 degrees Fahrenheit for 45 minutes, okay? You need an internal temperature of about 200 degrees. That's where mine is perfect at. I highly recommend, if you're going to be making anything sourdough related, get you some sort of, you can get them super cheap on Amazon, a cheap little meat thermometer, candy thermometer, whatever kind of little food thermometer you have will work just fine. Mine is actually a meat thermometer. So just get that and just stick it in the side of your bread and make sure that the temperature's right. Because a lot of times I have found with sourdough that it'll look ready and it really won't be ready. So I like to check the temp of mine just to be on the safe side. So as soon as you pull them out of the oven while they're still hot, take them out of the pans, put them on a cooling rack, and then we're going to take a stick of butter and we're just going to rub that butter all over that bread. Now you can just do the tops if you want to. I usually do the tops and the sides, again, because it just gives the bread a little bit of extra flavor. And this is actually salted butter, so it gave it just a little bit of a salty taste. Oh my gosh, it was so good, y'all. But you can use unsalted butter too, you know, whatever you want to do. But if you don't butter your bread when it comes out of the oven, and this is the same for my regular bread, I have, you know, like I said, I'll make sure I link my regular bread video and my sourdough playlist down in the description box for y'all. But even with my regular bread, I always rub it with butter, because if you don't, then your crust, the top of your crust is not going to be soft. At least in my experience. If I don't rub it with butter, my crust is not soft. And I want soft crust on my soft bread. You know what I mean? So once you get it all buttered up, you're just going to let these cool completely. Now, a lot of people will cut their bread warm, but like again with sourdough, in my experience, if you cut it while it is warm, it's going to be gummy, okay? And I'm not sure if that's the same principle with the sandwich loaf or not, but I work too hard on these. I'm not taking the chance. So I just let mine cool down pretty much completely, but at least let it cool down for an hour or two. And this is what it looks like when you cut into it. Y'all, it looks just like regular sandwich bread, but you can see up there I had a little bubble that I didn't see, and so there's a little hole right there in the top, and that's okay. It's fine. It's still bread. It'll be okay. So I'm going to show y'all just how soft this bread is, and I should have got my little bread cutter thing out, but I didn't think about it at the time. But yeah, so it's a little not exactly straight, but that's okay. It still tasted the same. But see this, how soft this is? It is just as soft as like the stuff you buy at the store, and it tastes so much better, y'all. So if you're on a sourdough journey and you have some sourdough discard and you're trying to figure out what recipe to make next with your sourdough discard, try this one. I'm telling you, you will not go back to store-bought bread. It is so dang good. Okay, y'all, that is all I have for y'all today in the sourdough world. I hope y'all enjoyed the video, and I will catch y'all on the next one. Bye, y'all.